There may be just over a day left of this summer transfer window, but that has not stopped Arsenal from doing plenty of business. We've just got to hope that they might have a couple more in the locker. This is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Appreciate your time as always. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for those also that tuned into yesterday's phone-in space we did. It's not available to listen back to. I guess maybe you can listen back to it on Twitter. I'm not 100% sure how it works. But we did a space yesterday on Twitter. And, of course, we'll be doing our phone-in show tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock UK time. 7 p.m. UK time. We will be doing our live evening deadline day phone-in show, getting people onto the episode, getting your thoughts, getting your feelings. So that's tomorrow, 7 p.m. UK time. If you want to get on the show, that's when you're going to need to start hopping into the call. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Rob, Colin, Kish, Paul. We've got Gary and Jim, Kevin K, Jamil, Brian, Jorgen, Gary, Jim, Abby, Tom, Trader Mike, Albert. We've got Graham. We've got Gary, Paul, Yassine, Angry Pacifist, Barry, Keith, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you to you all for tuning in. It is incredibly appreciated. Today's a big day as well. Before we even get to deadline day, there's some big things happening on Thursday. We're going to talk about all that and more in today's stories. Please make sure if you haven't dropped a like on the video to do so. And if you haven't helped us to 1K every day, you need to get on that train. And also, of course, if you're listening on audio platforms, make sure you head over to YouTube and help drop a like as well. Subscribe to the channel and help us on our way to 60K. And if you're listening on social media or on Twitter, perhaps hop over to YouTube. You're much more involved if you're listening on YouTube, as always. Right. We start with yesterday's League Cup draw for the round 3 of the competition. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Aston Villa and Tottenham were all kept out of each other's way in a new format for the League Cup draw because, of course, these games clash with the Champions League fixtures. These games need to be played on a week in which there's no Champions League or European action, of course. And so the 6 or 7 European sides, Chelsea as well, have been kept apart from one another and drawn separately against other teams in the competition at this stage. I don't know if that carries on to the 4th round or if it's just for round 3, but that's how it's happened for this round. And Arsenal have been drawn at home against Bolton in what is definitely a very, very good draw for us. Obviously, we've seen Arsenal drawn against Premier League sides for the most part in these rounds of the competition. West Ham have knocked us out. Brighton have knocked us out. Well, now we've finally got some Man City draw luck and got ourselves a League One side at home at the Emirates with the expectation, of course, of plenty of changes in the team. Debuts, perhaps, maybe, for a new goalkeeper. We'll talk about that later. The rest of the draw is as follows. Liverpool against West Ham, Man City against Watford, Man United against Barnsley, Wickham against Villa, Coventry against Tottenham, Walsall against Leicester, Brentford against Leyton Orient, Blackpool against Sheffield Wednesday, Preston North End against Fulham, Everton against Southampton, QPR against Crystal Palace, Stoke City against Fleetwood, Brighton against Wolves, Wimbledon against Newcastle, and Chelsea against Barrow. So, yes, some interesting draws there. And I think potentially it has this League Cup the opportunity now to see much bigger ties drawn in the latter stages of the competition, with the biggest teams expected, of course, to progress to the next stages of it. Speaking of draws, the Champions League draw will take place this evening, UK time 5 p.m. Arsenal are in pot 2. And of course, with the new changes to the competition, will be drawn against 8 different teams. They will face 2 teams from pot 1, 2 teams from pot 2, 2 from pot 3, and you've guessed it, 2 from pot 4. They cannot face any other English teams in the Champions League first stage, nor can they face an English team in the first round of the knockout level of the competition, either should they make it. The competition has been changed, of course. It will now take the form of a league system for the first phase of the competition for all 32 sides. The top 8 teams that finish in those places will go straight through to the last 16, whereas places 9 to 24 will play off against one another in a last 32 knockout round with the last 16 knockout rounds. No, it is 32. It's definitely 32. The last 32 knockout round with the winning teams going through to the last 16 overall. It's complicated, but it's actually quite good. I like this change to the Champions League. The only obvious frustration is the additional 2 games that you now have to play. But it is, yes, the top 8 go straight through to the last 16, and then the 16 teams below that, 9 to 24, will go into a playoff between each other to get into the last 16 of the competition proper. Teams in pot 1. So Arsenal will be drawn against at least, just 2, not at least 2 of these 9 teams. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester City won't be one of them. So only 7 teams are available because Liverpool are one of the others. PSG, Bayern, Inter Milan, Dortmund, and Leipzig. 2 of those teams will be playing Arsenal other than City and Liverpool. In pot 2, we can be drawn against Atletico Madrid, Bayer Leverkusen, Juventus, Atalanta, Benfica, AC Milan, Club Brugge, and Shakhtar Donetsk. In pot 3, Arsenal can face 2 teams of Feyenoord, Sporting, PSV, Celtic, Red Bull Salzburg, Young Boys, Dinamo Zagreb, Lille, and Crvena Zvezda, or Red Star Belgrade. And in pot 4, they can face 8 of the following sides because they cannot be drawn against Aston Villa, Girona, Monaco, Bologna, Stuttgart, Sparta Prague, Stade Brest, Sturm Graz, and the last team is Slavia. I want to say it's Slavia Prague. Slavia Bratislava. That's who it is. But yes, I was really testing my badge knowledge there. But yes, it's going to be an interesting competition, and it's going to be intriguing to see how it plays out. But that will take place at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Eddie Nketiah is expected to complete his £30 million move to Crystal Palace this afternoon. The second part of his medical has been now completed, and Arsenal will get the £30 million that they've been looking for when it comes to Eddie Nketiah. Another fantastic piece of business by Arsenal and Edu, getting in maximum value for one of their players. Just a quick question. Some people asking why City and Liverpool in pot 1, but we're not. It's done by UEFA coefficient. And because obviously we were out of European competition for a number of years, we aren't in it in pot 1, but we are still in pot 2. So hopefully that answers your question. But the big transfer news of yesterday, I suppose, was Aaron Ramsdale. Aaron Ramsdale has agreed a £25 million move to Southampton, £18 million with £7 million in add-ons. It's expected that £1 million of that add-on is if Southampton stay up, with the other remaining £6 million performance-related add-ons. So that'll be to do with, I suppose, clean sheets, maybe appearances made, etc., etc. And when it comes to this deal, I'm glad that only 1 million of those add-ons is to do with staying up. I think that's obviously a really positive thing because we expect Ramsdale to be the starting goalkeeper. So you'd much rather they were performance-related add-ons because they are therefore much more achievable. And Arsenal also have a sell-on clause included in this deal as well, should Ramsdale ever be sold. People can wince, cry, moan about how much Arsenal should have got for Ramsdale. This is the reality. This was the best case scenario. I did not think that Arsenal would even get £25 million at this stage of the window for Aaron Ramsdale. I thought it was because the teams that were obviously in for him were looking at loans and, dry loans at that. So to get £25 million again, to bring Arsenal's total haul this summer to more than £100 million brought in, I think represents, in the end, decent business for Arsenal. Yes, it's a shame that Ramsdale is going. Yes, it's a shame that it's gone the way that it has gone. But in the end, I think this is the best case scenario for all parties. And ultimately, we have been ruthless with this position. Arsenal have brought in David Raya, of course, who is continually proving now to be a better goalkeeper than we had with Aaron Ramsdale. And we've seen that, obviously, not only last season with him winning the Golden Glove, but him certainly disproving those claims that he wouldn't have got the Golden Glove were it not solely for the presence of the defence in front of him, because the saves that he has made at the start of this campaign are the reason that Arsenal still have 6 points as opposed to less than that. So certainly it is in the end working out, I think, for all parties in the best possible way. And I wish Ramsdale all the best of luck in the world, and hope that he has a very successful rest of his career. He was an absolute joy to interview, to speak to. Ramsdale was one of the first people I actually sat down with as a journalist to talk to, and always gave time in moments where it was tricky and tough. I remember speaking to him after the defeat against Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. Obviously, Erling Haaland scoring with his ponytail out and his hair down, if you remember that game. Well, no Arsenal fans tend to want to speak to the journalists and the media after games in which they haven't won. But Ramsdale took the time to speak to myself and Simon from the Evening Standard after that game, and spoke really honestly and very well after that. And he will always be, for me, one of the best characters that Arsenal have had. I look forward to hopefully seeing him flourish in a new club and a new team, and taking his game to the next level, and hopefully getting back into the England squad into much greater competitive form too. So Ramsdale, we're wishing him all the best. And in his place could be Juan Garcia, the Espanyol Spain Olympic 23-year-old goalkeeper, who last night helped keep a clean sheet for Espanyol against Atletico Madrid, making a particularly fantastic save in the first half as well. And a very impressive performance overall from Garcia in that game at the Wanda Metropolitano in La Liga yesterday. The suggestions around the price tag are, to me, a little bit of a concern. The idea that we would pay £25 million for our second choice goalkeeper is a little bit of a worry. No matter how good Garcia is, and I think he is a very decent keeper, but the idea of spending £25 million on a backup, I have real issues with that. The reason why I have a real issue with that is because there is a chance that at 23 years of age, this isn't like a 20-year-old goalkeeper coming in. At 23 years of age, if he sits as Arsenal's number 2 for 1 or 2 seasons and he leaves after 2 seasons, because Raya I don't see going anywhere at the moment, unless Garcia has an amazing rise. Raya gets injured, Garcia kind of establishes himself in that number 1 position for a bit. If he hasn't kind of grown into that role, if he hasn't pushed out Raya in 1 to 2 years, then he's sold, and probably sold for far less than what we bought him for. It's a big gamble, I think. It's a gamble, and it's Arsenal clearly seemingly are willing to take a gamble. We don't know if it ends up that they'll be paying that release clause. I don't see why Espanyol would have any reason to let him go for anything less than his release clause. And we do know that Mikel Arteta tends to only have his backup keepers playing the cup games, which, of course, we haven't played too many of over the last couple of seasons. Maybe that will change moving forwards. But there's no doubt that Garcia is a very, very talented goalkeeper and a player that is producing some very impressive performances for Espanyol, starting week in, week out in La Liga. And taking that switch to Arsenal to become their number 2 is a big decision for the player, a big decision for the goalkeeper. But he, hopefully, if he arrives, will be a big, big success and will be a very solid number 2 for us. But I just think spending £25 million on a number 2 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I hope we don't pay that much. I just can't see any reason why Espanyol would not want the release clause paid at this stage of the window. They are under no pressure to sell. They're a La Liga side again. I wouldn't describe it as a big concern, as Jabu has in the chat. I think that's a bit far. I just think it's a big question mark and a big gamble if indeed Arsenal spend that much money on a number 2. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. It is not the only goalkeeper that's being linked to Arsenal, because James McNicholas of The Athletic reporting yesterday that Arsenal are interested in signing 22-year-old goalkeeper Sam Tickle from Wigan Athletic. Arsenal have wanted a third-choice goalkeeper all summer. Of course, we know they put that £50,000 bid in for Dan Bentley of Wolves to become their third-choice keeper. Even though we signed Tommy Setford, of course, from Ajax for around £1 million, I was always told that Setford was seen as an academy goalkeeper. Always seen as a player that, was not going to be a senior figure. I know that he'd been included as the third choice keeper in the squads and been the 21st member of the team on a number of occasions this time. But Arsenal have always wanted to bring in a third choice keeper during this window. Don't. I made a joke on Twitter yesterday about we need a forward, so we're signing a third goalkeeper as a joke. Sadly, there are some strange people out there that are actually kind of criticising Arsenal for looking at bringing in a third choice keeper instead of a forward. This deal has absolutely no bearing on whether or not Arsenal sign a forward this window. So don't be fooled into any false amount of negative energy surrounding the club of that. It is just a deal that Arsenal have wanted to do throughout the course of the summer to bring in a third choice keeper, and they're looking at potentially Sam Tickle as a player that might be able to be that person for Arsenal. Our last story to discuss today, because still it seems that forward links and specific names at this point in time are elusive for Arsenal. The only real name that has got any kind of traction surrounding Arsenal at the moment is quite indirect and quite secondary in its nature, and that is Kingsley Coman. The French international, of course, who has been linked with a move to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. Fabrizio Romano coming out yesterday suggesting that reports that he'd agreed a move to the Saudi team are false and that was not the case, but that a Premier League team are still interested and potentially looking and assessing at Coman as an option. We just don't know who this Premier League team is. I am sincerely hoping that it is us, because despite his injury record, we need a forward, not a striker. We do technically need a striker, but we need a forward. And I sincerely hope that Coman, regardless of his injuries, is the forwards that Arsenal end up going for at this late stage of the window. There are not too many options on the market, and to come in and be some depth for Arsenal's options up top, I think Coman would be one of the better choices that we've got remaining. That said, I agree with a few people in the chat box. It's probably Chelsea. It's probably Chelsea that are the team that are looking at this one. It could be somebody else. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I would take Kingsley Coman on a single-year deal or a loan deal between now and the end of the window, which, of course, now sits at just under 48 hours. Not long left at all. In fact, it's a lot less than that. It's around 40 hours left of the window now. Not long to go. You, however, can pick up a really good deal when it comes to your NordVPN in no time at all by going over to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. And on top of that 2-year deal, you can get 4 months extra thrown in free too. A VPN is absolutely a necessity in 2024. If you indeed are a user of a mobile device, a tablet or a laptop, having a VPN is the protective way to stay safe online. And of course, NordVPN have continued to sponsor the channel and support us here. And that's because you guys have been absolutely brilliant in indeed taking them up on the offer. If you're not happy with it for whatever reason, you can get a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. So maybe you go on holiday, use that, use that, utilize it. You know, it's worth it. And not only that, but of course, Football Prizes continue to sponsor us, and you can still win a signed Dennis Bergkamp shirt, courtesy of Football Prizes. A link to the competition is down in today's video description. There are 131 tickets of the 325 that went on sale at the start of this week. There is also some instant win prizes that I haven't really been telling you about, to be fair. I should probably do more effort in telling you about those. You can also win not only 1 or 2, but 3. There are 3 Dennis Bergkamp shirts to win in this competition. So best of luck to all those of you that do get involved. You enter into the main one, but just by buying a ticket, you enter yourself into competitions to win potentially 2 others, kind of crazingly. So that you can also get an Arsenal Invincible badge set as well, and a golden key for their Football Prizes giveaway as well. So I recommend you go and get involved with all that. All the details, of course, down in the link in the description. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, then. Jumping into the chat box and hopefully getting some interesting thoughts from you people that have been joining us today. So fantastic to see so many of you once again tuning in across our platforms. Nearly 2,000 of you listening on YouTube, nearly 400 of you listening across social media. YouTube is the only place to truly get the full TGT morning experience. So I recommend that if you are listening elsewhere, that you hop over to YouTube. Let's go into the chat box, though, shall we? And tackle some of your thoughts. Do drop a like, of course, if you haven't done so already. It just takes you 1 second, and it really does help us out. Anthony says, Tom, as our conversation on Twitter yesterday, of course, Anthony joined us for our space yesterday evening that we conducted. It was very entertaining indeed. Filled an hour of my time very effectively. And he says, I would rather we try go for Lookman. However, what I read, it's dependent on Nelson leaving. I don't know how true that is. What's your thoughts? Of course, Nelson remains a player that could yet still leave Arsenal during these latter stages of the window. It may be that Arsenal wish to move Nelson on and get a decent fee before they're kind of open up to the idea of trying a late big move for a player. It depends, of course, how much that was even offered towards Nelson. We know Fulham have an interest in Nelson. I don't think Arsenal would be wanting to sell Nelson unless they were able to bring in a wide player. It would seem absolute madness, in my opinion, to lose Reece Nelson without bringing in a wide player. It seems madness to lose Nketiah without bringing in a forward player, but at the end of the day, that could genuinely be a possibility we see during this week. Amira says, Hein has gone to the same league as Garcia this season, playing for Real Valladolid on loan. When the season ends, there is a chance that Hein would have played more first-team games than Garcia. If Hein develops well and we sell him, I'm not confident that we would get 25 million. No, neither would I, Amira. I'd be confident of getting a few million, but I wouldn't be confident of getting 25. And it's a very fair point. Cal says, hi, Tom. If we get a striker/winger between today and tomorrow, how much are you willing for the club to spend? As much as it takes, Cal. You know, I'm not really fussed about how much we spend or how much we can spend. I'm just fussed that we do spend. I'm fussed that we add a forward between now and tomorrow's deadline. I think it's important that we do that. And if we don't do that, I am and have concerns, about the depth that we have in the forward line. Matt G says, Tom, I've got an anniversary lunch on Saturday at the same time as the Brighton game. Any tips for how I can stay updated with the score? Of course there is, Matt. You can follow the live blog on the football.london website, my friend. I'll be at the Emirates Stadium course on Saturday, doing our minute-by-minute commentary, keeping you up to date with everything that's going on throughout the game with, of course, insights from inside the stadium. So, yes, that's how you can do it, mate. Football.london live blog, always going live 4 hours before kickoff. Owen says, long-time listener on Spotify, is it not a bit bizarre seeing Chiesa, who was a player of the tournament in 2020, go to Liverpool for less than 20 million? I mean, it's less than 15 million. It's an incredibly cheap deal for Chiesa. And I think we missed the boat on that one. I think Arsenal could have signed him for that. I think it's a free hit of a signing for that amount of money to sign Chiesa. Yes, he's had injury issues, but 33 games in Serie A last season, 9 goals, 3 assists. It's a really good return for 10 odd million quid that Liverpool are playing. So, yeah, I do think we missed a bit of a trick with Chiesa. Sirius says, hi, Tom. I was just curious to know on your slides, when we sell a player, you put the full amounts, including add-ons. But when we purchase a player, you only put the base price, excluding add-ons. I think I mix it up, to be fair, Sirius. It depends upon... There's been a few kind of discrepancies in prices sometimes. And it also depends on just my state of mind in the morning, I guess, Sirius. So it's coincidental. I always tell you, if you go back and rewind to this morning's show, I think I said 18 million plus 7. So I think you're reading a little bit too deeply into it, I'm afraid. Didier says, people have their mood affected by transfers that were never going to happen. It baffles me. Yeah, it baffles me too. I genuinely think people take football far too seriously. And this is coming from someone who his entire life is surrounded and ingrained with this sport. I have come to learn that it is so important for football to not be the number one thing in your world, and making sure that family, friends, hobbies, interests, are also there is so much better for your mental health. And I've spoken to people who are listeners of the channel, actually, who have also gone through a similar change to myself in putting football second, when before it never was. And it was always kind of the number one thing, and it would affect, if Arsenal lost, my mood would be wrecked for days, weeks at times. If indeed, I remember that time we obviously missed out on top 4 a couple of years back during the Amazon documentary series. I was affected for weeks after that point, knowing the shows I was going to have to do, the writing I was going to have to do, all so dour and negative. But I've really learned to detach myself from it. And it's always the advice I give people that, when you're a kid, and I think people like your parents would be like, it's just a game. And you get so annoyed at people saying, it's just a game. It's just a game. It's a way of life for sure still, but at the core of it is just a game, and there is far more important things in this world than football. So if people are getting irate and so ridiculously angry and affecting their mental health regarding transfers, take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize there are way more important things in this world than this. But yes, and this is coming from someone that I make my living off the sport. I need you guys here, but I always say to you, if you need to take a break from football, if you need to take a break from listening to us, if you need to take a break from tuning in at 8 a.m. every single day because Arsenal or football is affecting you, do it. We'll still be here when you want to come back, but take the breaks that you need to take because you are way more important than this sport. So look after yourselves. Thank you, Kian, for your very kind donation. Kian says, does it feel underwhelming being linked with Tony, especially when Osimhen, Nico, and Gyökeres are all possibilities? I don't think we've really been linked with Tony, have we? I know there was that link from Robbie yesterday. I said yesterday that I've personally heard nothing. To which I think a child in the comment section tried to say I was firing shots at Robbie just by saying that I'd not heard anything regarding that link, and I still haven't. I've heard nothing to suggest that there is any interest in Ivan Toney at the moment either, just from my personal perspective. Ray Beam says, I can't believe we used to scrape 200 viewers back when I started watching TGT. Hey, you got to start somewhere, mate. You got to start somewhere, And if I always say to people ask me, like, what's the biggest advice you've got for starting your own channel? And I always say, well, first off, I was in a very privileged position to, of course, take over the channel from Craig back in 2016 at around 7,000 to 8,000 subs. But obviously, we started the Arsenal way from scratch, and that's now up to like 110,000 subscribers. So if you don't start, you never will. It's just taking that first step, taking those jumps, take risks. If you don't take risks, you don't start things, it will never happen. So make it happen. TJR says, how many more goalkeeper signings will Arsenal make before the window closes? 4, 5? I can't be less than that, surely. Maybe 2. You might get 2 goalkeepers before the end of the window. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Daniel's been a member now for 47 months, one of our longest serving members of the channel. 1 month away from his 4-year TGT anniversary. You'll love to see it. It's probably been around since we were scrapping around for 200 listeners on a show. Daniel Roberts says, Saka hasn't needed cover in years, so why does he need it now? I don't think it's so essential. Last season, our issue was left back and left 8, and we have dealt with both of those things. I do think that people's perspective of what our priorities are have changed. For me, as I maintain and have said since day one, centre midfield was my number 1, and it remained my number 1. And beyond that was then second was always was a forward player. I always wanted to see a Bukayo Saka backup. That was my number 2. Left back was also involved in that because we need the left-hand side to be sorted because that left-hand side has been in a state of flux for quite some time. But I always felt as though we needed a Saka backup or a competitor, is the better word I like to use. But the reason why, Dan, it's changing now is because Saka is starting to get little injuries and little knocks that are keeping him out of games. We saw it last season with Man City. We saw it away at Lens. We saw it in the last game of the season against Everton. Imagine if we'd have been in a position last season where we actually had beaten Aston Villa and we had to beat Everton on the final game of the season to win the league, and Saka weren't available like he wasn't. And we had to wait until the last second for Havertz to get that goal to confirm, of course, that we did all we could on our ends to try and win the league. We need to bring in a player now because injuries are starting to stack up and minutes are starting to add up for Saka way more. He's not 20 anymore. And I think that's a big part of this. 1886 AFC says, no point hating our players. We need to show unity and stand by them through difficult and tough times. None of us know what else is going on in the background. If you can sit there and say that you genuinely hate, and I use that word seriously, anyone can sit around and say they genuinely hate any player or any manager or any executive or any director that Arsenal Football Club have right now, I have questions for you because I don't know how you can get into a state of mind where you're using the word hate because that's incredibly strong. Hate is a word reserved for the worst of the worst in your lives. It shouldn't be an Arsenal player, director, or manager. that is on the end of that word at all. It's absolutely maddening to me. Rev Stan says, Tom, I don't think there are available forwards who can really improve our squad. We might be better off waiting until January transfers or even next year. People underestimate Nelson and Nwaneri. I've had a few discussions with people about this. People talking about how we're apparently weaker because we've allowed Smith Rowe and Vieira to leave. Well, I think there's two really good responses to that point of view. The first one, of course, being that Mikel Merino has been brought in as a direct replacement for Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe, when he was playing in this team, was playing more centrally these days, was playing alongside Martin Ødegaard. Remember the game away at Nottingham Forest this season? You play him in the middle of the park. He wasn't playing on the left. He's not played on the left for a long, long time. Mikel Merino, of course, has come in as a better player than Smith Rowe and is obviously going to be giving us a lot more experience and consistency too. Vieira, I don't get how he is suddenly being used by the critics who have all the critics have done with Vieira is batter the bloke. Say he's too lightweight, not good enough, etc. and so on. And all of a sudden now Vieira is being used as this whole, we're weaker because we don't have Vieira. If you had the choice between investing minutes into Vieira or Nwaneri, the choice was obvious. The minutes that we should have invested in Vieira this season should always have been invested instead in Nwaneri, and now we're going to get the opportunity to do that. I really don't think that you see all that much of a difference between Vieira on the pitch and one of the most talented youngsters coming through the academy. And on top of that, Arteta has been battered and bruised by his critics for not using youth, for not playing youth players. And now all of a sudden we make a decision by sending one of our senior players on loan to open up a pathway to one of our most talented and brightest youngsters. And now all of a sudden everyone's got loads to say about Vieira. I love the fan base's negative end because I feel as though they are so easily put into a position where they make themselves look silly that it makes my job and your job as the grounded, level-headed supporters in this fan base to just laugh. And then I get called condescending for doing that, but who cares? If that's the worst I can get accused of by laughing at people making themselves look silly, I'll take it. I'll take that all the live long day, every single day. Dana says, not signing a forward is negligent. Arteta himself has said that we're short and we are one current first team attacking injury from having no bench. Martinelli and Jesus as well. Saying words, I don't disagree with Damo. I think it would be really disappointing if we don't sign a forward player. I don't go as far as saying it's like a disgrace. I think I talked to someone on Spaces yesterday who labelled it a disgrace. I think we've done enough in this window that you can't call it a disgrace. But it would be incredibly disappointing if we don't add a forward. And negligent is a decent word. I think it would be somewhat negligent if we don't bite the bullet and bring in, it's all well and good not signing players for the sake of signing players. And I'm always a big backer of that. But in the moment where not signing a player is the most important thing, I can't back that when we are obviously in so much need of adding another forward player between now and tomorrow's deadline. So let's hope that they do it, because we're going to have some very serious chats tomorrow evening if they don't, that's for sure. Sri says, is Martinelli suffering because of the system? I feel Ødegaard combines well with Saka, but very less with Martinelli and Rice. It's not a natural 8-10 like Ødegaard is. And this is why we've looked to invest, Sri, in the left-hand side. This is why we've looked to bring in Moreno. It's why we've obviously brought in Calafiori. We are identifying our issues and acting upon them, which is something that we haven't done enough of prior to Arteta's arrival, prior to Edu's arrival. Whenever we've got issues in this team, we've tended to look at addressing them as best we can. It took a decade before we replaced... It took more than a decade. It took 15 years before we replaced Patrick Vieira by bringing in Thomas Partey. 15 years. It took 10 years before we really brought in one of the best centre-halves that we could have brought in and have brought in since, our golden era in Gabriel. Gabriel is the best defender that we've had at this club, along with Saliba, since... what? Colatori and Sol Campbell? I think. Koscielny, Vermaelen, they're better than them. I'm trying to think of a centre half. I think if any have escaped me, Per Mertesacker is better than him. They are the best defenders that we have had since we won the league. It's as simple as that. And it's taken Arteta and Edu's partnership and record and thought process and ruthlessness in the market to do that. So for me, it's continually showing us that if there's any optimism that we will sign a forward, it should be greater than any previous iteration of this Arsenal, tenureship at all. Nathan says, is there another Premier League team that could attract Coman besides us and Villa? Obviously, there are loads. Chelsea, Man United could be looking, if Sancho's going, they might look at trying to bring in Coman as a replacement. So definitely. Definitely, yes. Gary says, is Martinelli experiencing the same as Saka did, being doubled up on? Saka struggled for a while with this, but it's made him better, and I back Martinelli to do the same. And clearly opposition are feeling his threat. It's a challenge that they all need to overcome. All these players need to overcome this level, this challenge, this obstacle. And Martinelli is challenged now to overcome what is something of a difficult one. Ajma says, what are your thoughts on Ramsdale once being one of the most valuable goalkeepers and now going to a promoted club with no interest from abroad or Premier League teams? My thoughts are, that's football. And that's a reality of Arsenal going and getting a better goalkeeper in David Raya and improving as a result. Conceding fewer goals, again winning the Golden Glove, and this season being absolutely integral in Arsenal having 6 points. It's football. It's just how it goes, I'm afraid. And I don't agree with the whole Ramsdale has been treated despicably, because quite frankly, Ramsdale has been treated, could we have handled some of it a bit better? Could we have given him a few more minutes in the Champions League group stage? Maybe. Would that have really changed much? Would that have really changed much at all? Are you telling me that if we'd have played him in the Champions League games, suddenly top teams would want him more than they would? Because I don't. Because I think, sadly, for Ramsdale, he has reached a point in his career at Arsenal where he needs to be sold in a position in the market where top teams are sorted in terms of goalkeepers. There just are not teams out there that need a goalkeeper like Ramsdale. Kepa Arrizabalaga, 80 million quid's going on loan to Bournemouth this season. Every team in the country, a level that would give you the money that maybe would be more than 25 million, have got goalkeepers. They've got goalkeepers. I also don't get the whole he's been treated terribly. They signed him up to a new contract before this season, put him on very good wages. He's on over 100 grand a week. Is that treating the guy terribly? You rewarded him with what he's done, with a very good deal that he didn't have to sign. And of course, you'll say that, well, he probably didn't know that Raya was coming in. And I don't think he did. But that's the risk you take. That is always going to be the case as a goalkeeper. Every decision you make in terms of your future has to be with the knowledge that you could be replaced this week. You could be replaced next week. You could be replaced in a month's time, a season's time. So he's on a very good contract, got very good money from Arsenal. I imagine he'll be on very good money still at Southampton as well after that contract too. And it's part of football. It's just football. I think the fact that he's English, I think the fact that he's a great guy, a great character, goes viral, does a lot of podcasts, puts him out there in the media a lot. If this was any other player, I don't think that there would be the same kind of negative criticism of Arsenal's handling of him as we are seeing with Ramsdale. I had sympathy for it a few months ago. I don't really anymore. I've really grown to realize that no one person is bigger than the club. The biggest person at the club is always going to be the manager in terms of the decision that they're making. And we needed to make decisions for the benefit of this team. And frankly, Raya is a better goalkeeper and is producing better performances for us. And so that is all that matters. That is the bottom line, is if the player is better, you play them. And that's what we've done. And I just find it baffling how in other areas we praise and we're fine with long-serving parts of this group being ousted. We're fine with players who have been stalwarts of this team, like Bellerin and to a lesser extent. Think about Bernd Leno. Like, where was the energy for Bernd Leno when he was ousted? Because he's gone to Fulham and been very good. But there was never anywhere near the level of kind of appreciation for Leno, who was a very decent goalkeeper at the time. The difference is absolutely monumental between both of them. So I'm struggling with that one. Yeah, like we've replaced players. Olivier Giroud was replaced by Lacazette, and that didn't work out at all. We've had to go and spend a lot more money to try and replace that. But yeah, I just feel like some players haven't received the same level of kind of affection as Ramsdale has, and I think that comes down to A, he's English, and B, he's a very likable character. He's a great guy. Silla says, what happens if Ødegaard gets injured? Are we really going to rely on a 17-year-old in the Premier League? Replace this sentence, right? What happens if Ødegaard gets injured? Are we really going to rely on Fabio Vieira in the Premier League or the Champions League? Liverpool now have better depth than us. Do you see much of a difference between those two sentences? Because I don't. I don't see much of a difference between those two. Yeah, I didn't really see that sentence much prior to Fabio Vieira leaving on loan. I really didn't. Ødegaard's depth has been something which we look at with concern, definitely. But what I would say is that we have to make decisions sometimes that give opportunities to players like Nwaneri. Nwaneri's best position is Ødegaard's role. That's his best role. So if you're going to give Nwaneri the opportunities to play, you have to make the decisions to open up the pathway. You just do. We can't sit and cry and moan that Arteta doesn't give youth a chance, and then when a decision is made to open up the door for Nwaneri to get more opportunities, we're saying, are we really going to sit here and allow this to be the case? You know? For me, it's just not the case. And I'm very glad that this is a decision that we have taken. I may end up eating my words in a few months' time. But I am personally glad. And it's not the case of it just being Nwaneri either, because Havertz can play there, and Mikel Merino can also play there. So no, I'm not wildly concerned about the depth. Do we potentially need to go out into the market in the future and add a versatile attacking player that can play in wide areas and maybe play as an attacking midfielder? Do we still need to add that player this window? You could argue that we do if it's a versatile enough option for us. That's why I really like Xavi Simons. I really thought that we maybe missed the boat on testing the Xavi Simons area. I liked him as a player. I think that he could have brought things to the wide areas and to attacking midfield. He was always a profile of player that I really liked. We didn't move for him, which is a shame. But I just think you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't at one moment moan that Arteta is not giving youth enough of an opportunity and then loan out the player that is blocking his pathway to the first team and moan that we now don't have enough depth. You can't have both. You can't. Simmons ended up at RB Leipzig on another loan deal from PSG. So maybe next summer is one where we can see us move. Razor says, I have a feeling that we're signing Eze. He would cover lots of roles. We would still need a striker. I don't think it would be this summer that Eze goes, but it might be next summer that Eze goes, and it might be between Arsenal, Liverpool, and Man City to sign the guy. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Eze wasn't a target next summer for us. Franklin says, Tom, don't you think GW Martin would have had an opportunity now with our lack of attacking? No, absolutely not, frankly. He's 16. He's 16 years old. He's not old enough to go on loan yet. That's how young the guy is. He's been playing at under 18s level with a physical advantage for a long time. Very impressive, very exciting young striker. But no, this expectation that a 16-year-old who's had this physical advantage over his opponents for the last 2 years and therefore is still, even at 16 in an under 18s league, has looked impressive, is nowhere near Arsenal's first team. No, he's not even made. He's barely played in the under-21s, and when he has played in the under-21s, he's not delivered. So how on earth are we going to expect him to kind of deliver at senior level for Arsenal Football Club? Absolutely not. And this is the unrealistic view that we have of some of the youngsters that are on the books. This is the unrealistic view. Nwaneri has been one of the most impressive youngsters that we have ever seen come through Arsenal's academy. Miles Lewis-Skelly is very close in that regard as well. And I was very impressed by what I saw from both players during pre-season. But they're still, they're still raw. They're still way off the starting standard of Arsenal, and they need more minutes and more experience. So I'm sorry, but no. I didn't mean to come at you so emotionally there, but it's one of the things that really does bug me. Is like the idea that a 16-year-old is going to break into this Arsenal team and have a big say in the season when they've only played under 18s football. It's different from Waneri, because Waneri has played at senior level for us, and we've seen what he's doing. We've seen him given chances, and he's established in the under 21 side and has played to a very good standard at under 21 level. Very, very good standard at under 21 level. Whereas Chido Martin has not done that. He's not broken in the under 21s. And when he has been given opportunities at the under 21 level, they haven't been transformatively convincing to say, yeah, he is going to be, an Arsenal striker of the future. So, and he's leaving and has left already. So he's off to Manchester United, we assume, at this point in time. Alexander says, Tom, should we sign a right-footed forward to back up Bukayo Saka? All of our wingers cut in, and I feel like they can be predictable at times. What specific age profile and characteristics? I'm more in favour, Alex, of the inverted option. I think an inverted player is better for us. But to be honest, we need them to be both-footed, because Saka has really refined his right foot ability. He's so dangerous on both feet now that defenders have an absolute nightmare trying to deal with him. And that's what makes it so tricky. Clive joining us in the chat. 2,000 of people watching. Thank you for your kind words, mate. There is over 2,000 of you here on YouTube now. There's over 600 of you also watching on Twitter. YouTube is the only place to get the best experience of watching these shows. So if you are watching on social media, make sure you hop over to YouTube. We are going to bring things to a close, though, because I've got a very busy day ahead, and I have the absolute delight of watching the Champions League draw with our good friend Mike from the Gooners pod. And that does bring me on to, of course, plugging once again at Drayton Park tomorrow evening. You can go to the first annual Arsenal Art Fair. So if you are in the London area tomorrow, I recommend heading over to Drayton Park. All the information is available on the Gooners vs. Cancer website. But yes, if you would like to head over to Drayton Park Pub, that's 66 Drayton Park, London, N5 1ND, from 7 o'clock through to 11 p.m. You're going to be able to see some fantastic artwork from Arsenal content creators, Arsenal artists, Ruth Beck, Del Llewellyn, Charlie Shanks, Carl Bork, North Banksy, who, of course, if you know of North Banksy, you'll know of their fantastic work producing some of the best murals you will see around North London on a match day. There's opportunities to win prizes. There's a charity auction as well. You'll be able to enjoy all of the festivities of Deadline Day from there as well. And I'm sure Mike's going to put on the TGT phone-in show all evening. Obviously, he's going to be doing that. Of course, if you aren't able to attend and you want something to do on Friday evening, I will be running a extra long Arsenal phone-in show from 7 o'clock tomorrow evening here on the channel live. So make sure you tune in for that. May I remind you, tomorrow morning, there is going to be no live show at 8 a.m. because it is Deadline Day. I am working the 6 a.m. shift, so there will be no live 8 a.m. There may be a pre-recorded show, but it's unlikely. So just bear that in mind. It's always the case on Deadline Day. So those that are new to the channel this summer and are being like, how on earth can you run a transfer show and then not do one on Deadline Day? Don't worry, we'll have a show for you in the evening, an extra long show to make up for it. But I do work from 6 a.m. every Deadline Day. I'm always working from 6 a.m. So there isn't an 8 a.m. show live tomorrow, but there will be one, of course, on Saturday, and there will be the show tomorrow evening as well. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow evening then. And I look forward to seeing what Arsenal are going to do in these next 36 hours. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. Or it won't be any of those things, and we'll still be Arsenal fans and fine at the end of it. Really appreciate your time. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Not tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening. It's a force of habit. I'm sorry. And yeah, Champions League draw. Fingers crossed we get a good one, and fingers crossed we're entertained with a fantastic end to the transfer window. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and thank you, as always, for your kind support on the channel. And as always, up the Arsenal.